Welcome to Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your co-MC Rach.
And I'm your co-MC Rich. We wanted to talk about the ENnies. Yay! Specifically, not all the ENnies, but just the one we're nominated for.
Well, maybe some other ENnies, but that's spoilers for later in the episode.
Indeed. So what's the ENnies? The ENnies comes from a website called EN-World. And in 2001, they created an annual award ceremony. And they give out these awards during Gen Con, the best 4 days in gaming, according to Gen Con LLC. And we were nominated for Best Podcast along with 4 other very cool shows. So we think there are probably a few folks, looky-loos, checking out what's this Plus One Forward thing.
Welcome to all the new listeners who might be tuning into our show for the first time and wondering, what is a Plus One Forward? What is a Powered by the Apocalypse? Who are these two wonderful people who are absolutely deserving of your ENnie votes? Please give us votes.
Please vote for us. Well, let's answer the first part. What's a Plus One Forward? It's a podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we focus on the play of Apocalypse engine games, which are also powered by the Apocalypse. We have 2 hosts. That's me, Rich.
And me, Rach.
And we usually invite on a third, sometimes a fourth gamer to talk about PBTA games.
Which raises a follow-up question. What is Powered by the Apocalypse and the Apocalypse engine?
Do you want to take that one, Rach?
Apocalypse World was originally released back in 2010. Dozens of games have come out using that framework since. Plus One Forward is a game term from Apocalypse World where you get a +1 bonus to your character's next roll. It's also a cool and fun phrase, so Rich made it our show's title.
Yeah.
There's no single version of the Apocalypse engine per se, as a lot of what Powered by the Apocalypse means for a particular game really depends on the designer. This is also why I like our interviews with designers so much, because it allows our listeners to consider the different ways to look at these games via the lens of all these different designers.
I like that too, because it's a framework, but it's also just like a design idea. So I've seen so many different permutations from what is a stat to how many dice do you roll and how do you give bonuses and calculate things. It's crazy.
Now that you know what the show is about, let's talk a little bit about us, the hosts. Rich, tell our new listeners a little bit about yourself. How did you come into Powered by the Apocalypse games?
I've been gaming for quite a while. My first RPG was Redbox D&D, and I had been playing mostly Dungeons & Dragons, Vampire the Masquerade, and a little bit of Legend of the Five Rings for a bit as well. Dipped my toe into the indie small press space and story games as well before Powered by the Apocalypse. But once I hit Apocalypse Engine and Dungeon World and Monster Hearts and Monster of the Week, all those first iteration of PBTA designs, it really clicked for me because it felt like this cool marriage between the games that I was used to and new and different stuff as well. Rach, tell us a little bit about you. How did you enter the world of PBTA?
I discovered PBTA back in 2012, and I was going to say that makes me a recent arrival, and then I realized the flow of time and felt sad. I played a one-shot of Apocalypse World at a local gaming convention, which was then followed by playing a lot of PBTA games that weekend. It was the new hotness there 10 years ago, and I was there to experience as much as I could over one weekend. I love how playbooks and the moves in a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games are inspired by media. I'm a media nerd, both in studying media theory, and also I'm a really big fangirl. To expand on that second point, my first role-playing experience was actually online freeform fandom role-playing in instant messaging and on forums. So fandom and me and role-playing, we go way back. And the first tabletop RPG that really struck a chord with me was the West End game Star Wars RPG.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes me the target demographic for PBTA, which wants to sell you on the idea of a character, not just a class, but a concept of who you are amongst this community and what you're doing, what your role is. And what things you do in the story to trigger mechanics. It's very fandom focused in my eyes. And I also, going back to the media theory aspect, I love seeing how PBTA creators oftentimes will take their favorite pieces of media and pull them apart in order to reassemble it back into a role-playing game.
Nice. Yes, that is very PBTA. That is super cool. I love how we take tropes or catchphrases and we mix them into the mechanics because it communicates things on a meta level that help us as players understand what does this mechanic do. Let's talk a little bit about the format or formats. What do we cover in a typical episode of Plus One Forward, Rach?
We have a few different kinds of episodes in Plus One Forward. For the first season, Rich did a slew of game-focused episodes where he had on a designer of a PBTA game to talk about playing PBTA games, talk about the game they designed, and then played a demo of it for a few minutes.
And then after Rach joined the show, we started making new and different episodes, like when we talk about game design, which terrifies me, but Rach is so smart. We also put out a few episodes where we paired a Powered by the Apocalypse game and a movie. Really love those, like Masks and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah. Or Apocalypse World and Mad Max Fury Road. We also have some roundtable episodes where we bring on an all-star cast of folks to do deep dives on specific games. And, of course, our summer series.
If you're tuning in to Plus One Forward right now, you might see our summer series in the middle of its run. Rich, what's the summer series?
PBTA is a framework, and as a framework, it's very open and easy to manipulate into wholly new animals. And these new animals sometimes become new frameworks for other folks to create games. That's how we got Belonging Outside Belonging from Dream Askew, and Forged in the Dark games from Blades in the Dark. And this summer, we're doing a series on Firebrands games, which all derived from Mobile Frame Zero Firebrands.
At this point, hopefully you're interested in listening to a little bit more from our back catalog. Why don't we help you get to know Plus One Forward a little bit more, while also helping you learn about some games on the docket for ENnie voting this year. We've interviewed a couple of game designers, and their games are up for voting this year. So to go through our back catalog, we could start with Cult Divinity Lost, which is nominated for Best Cartography, featured in our episode from August 26, 2019.
Root, the RPG, which, if I'm speaking in the style of the Twin Cities, would be Rut. Nominated for Best Game, Best Supplement, Product of the Year, featured in our episode from October 2nd, 2019.
Thirsty Sword Lesbians, nominated for Best Art Cover, Best Art Interior, Best Game, and Product of the Year, featured in our episode from February 11th, 2020.
Wander Home, nominated for Best Art Cover, Best Art Interior, Best Family Game / Product, featured in our episode from August 11th, 2020, and that was part of our Belonging Outside Belonging summer series.
And finally, A Complicated Profession, nominated for Best Electronic Book, featured in, I have a note here in our show notes saying that predicting future events may bring about the actual apocalypse. So,
as soon as I finish editing it, friends, check the feed around maybe July 19th. You might find that it might be out there. We realize that we have some really stiff competition. The other nominees for Best Podcast are really cool, and they cover a wide variety of actual play and game discussion. All we ask is that you vote, because the ENnies is cool, and we like it. We're proud to be nominated.
And thank you again for considering us in your ENnie voting for 2022.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at @+1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Hammer of Bill. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
You can now get Hearts of Wulin Worlds on DriveThruRPG. This supplement for Hearts of Wulin includes alternate settings and new mechanics. In it you'll find Shadow of the Joseon, a historical Korean setting. 1905 San Francisco, Chinatown in the shadow of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Corps de la Épée, a fantastic swashbuckling France. Academy of the Blade, an anime-inspired dueling school. Fight Me IRL, a cyberpunk corporatized future. And Silk and Steam, a silk-punk fantasy setting. As well, Hearts of Wulin Worlds contains a new core playbook, detailed options for running Wuxia mysteries, and more. You can get the PDF, as well as the core Hearts of Wulin book, at our drive-thru publisher site, bit.ly/gauntlet-publishing.